Hi, I'm Dana, and it's time for this week's question, and it comes from Gina, and she writes, our 15-month-old has been sleeping through the night for the past 6 months and been waking between 7 and 8 in the morning. In the past few weeks, he's begun to wake between 5 and 6 a.m. and is ready to start his day. He's down to 1 nap a day for 2 hours. Is there any way to get him back to sleeping longer in the morning? And I would say, Gina, that this is just about one of the most popular questions I get, is how do you prevent those early morning wake-ups? And they can be tricky, and they do linger. And so I'm going to give you my best suggestions, but I don't think you should expect anything to change too quickly. It does take time for the body clock to adjust. So the very first thing I always say to parents are you sure that the room is dark enough? And by that I mean dark as it is in the night. Even the slightest change of morning sunlight creeping into a room affects all of us, and we start to, kick out some cortisol, and we start to wake up earlier. And summer months are really tricky for adults and babies. But the good news is we can look at the clock and see that it's only 5 and go back to sleep, whereas your baby can't. So that's the first step. Make sure that room is nice and dark. And then what I want you to do is, when you hear him at 5, and this is only for early morning wake-ups, not for night wake-ups, something completely different, but for early morning wake-ups, if a parent goes in very quickly, as soon as you first hear him start to stir, one of you go in there, if he's standing, lay him back down, cover him back up, give him back his lovey, tell him it's still sleepy time, give him a few pats or a few strokes on the forehead, stay for a couple of minutes, and then leave. Sometimes if you catch the child before he fully wakes up, you can convince him to go back to sleep for another hour or two. It's just tricky when it's 5 and he's had the majority of his nighttime sleep. Once he really wakes himself up now, he might be too alert to actually even think about going back to sleep at that point. So give that a try, but then you really need to stick to your minimum. My minimum is 7. I won't let my children get up before 7. Now, they're all old enough now that they can see the clock and they know when it's 7 and when they can get up. But even when they were babies, I would stick very closely to my minimum, meaning if they woke up at 6:30, I would go in, I would tell them it's still sleepy time, tuck them back in, and then I would not get them up until 7. And so I think you need to pick your minimum. And if he was sleeping until 7 or 8, I would pick 7 as your minimum, okay? And give all that a solid try for at least 2, maybe even 3 weeks, and see how things are coming along. If you've really tried and you've given it a month and you're seeing no results, then it's worth considering making some adjustments on the bedtime side of things. If he's going to bed if he's waking up in the morning at 7 or 8 a.m., I'm guessing he goes to bed somewhere between 7 and 8 p.m., and you might need to adjust that just slightly. And go very cautiously and carefully when you adjust the bedtime, maybe by 10 or 15 minutes every 3 or 4 nights, and only by about a half an hour. And you might find that helps you get a little deeper into the morning. Maybe he just doesn't need quite as much nighttime sleep as before. So that's my best advice to all of you out there struggling with the early morning wake up. If you're just starting the Sleep Sense program, please be patient. Early morning wake-ups usually phase out on their own once you've worked a couple of weeks into the process. So don't panic if you have a 5 a.m. waker at the moment. It'll fade and it'll get better, and eventually they'll start sleeping until a more decent time. So thanks a lot for your question, Gina. Sleep well.